everybody, welcome to the very first episode of Unwanted Attention. In today's episode, we're going to be chatting about the terrifying case of Sarah Garone. It really is a shocking case of stalking that comes from before our modern perception of what stalking is solidified in the public consciousness. So let's get right into it. There really are few things in this world more unnerving than the idea of having a stalker. That internal dread that washes over when you receive an anonymous phone call or an anonymous letter, or the immense fear of somebody standing outside your home or your place of employment. Despite the prevalence of stalking, it still remains one of the most difficult crimes to define. And that's mostly due to the fact that stalkers use imaginative methods of stalking and harassment. Methods that on the surface can look pure and innocent. There's a misconception that stalking is mostly perpetrated by strangers or even acquaintances that develop an unnatural obsession. But in 1996, a teenage girl became the infatuation of a stalker much closer to home. One afternoon in 1996, 13-year-old Sarah Garone from Chandler, Arizona, went outside to check the mail at her family home. A wave of excitement overcame Sarah as she noticed that she had received an unexpected letter, and it was addressed just to her. Well, Sarah, she had just recently auditioned for the high school cheerleading squad, and she anticipated that the envelope contained confirmation that she had made the squad. She ripped open the envelope and excitedly pulled out the contents, but inside was no letter of congratulations. Sarah recoiled in horror as her eyes were transfixed to the contents, which were in fact photographs depicting graphic pornography. Sarah scanned the envelope for any kind of clues as to who they were from, but there was absolutely nothing. No name, no return address. Sarah later recalled to the Hamilton Spectator that she chalked up the experience to a one-off correspondence from some deranged would-be suitor. She told her mother and stepfather about the lurid contents, and they filed a police report and hoped that this would be the last of it. Life returned to normal for Sarah, and within a couple of months she had completely forgotten about the obscene photographs that she had anonymously received in the mail. Around a year later, however, another letter arrived at the family home addressed to Sarah. This time, there was a very disturbing message scribbled in red ink, which read, "Dear Sarah, I love you, I want you, I need you." It quickly became apparent to Sarah and her family that this was no isolated incident, and that Sarah had found herself victim to a stalker with an unnatural obsession. Sarah graduated from high school despite the pervasive attention from this unknown person. She subsequently enrolled in university, but the creepy letters only continued, and over time they became even more graphic in nature. When she logged into her university email, she would find sexually explicit emails from this anonymous stalker. It was such a terrifying scenario for Sarah. Like, who was this person? Was it someone from school whose obsession continued into adulthood? Was it some weird neighbour who knew that Sarah had gone to college? Despite the fact that Sarah was feeling more than unnerved from the unwanted attention, she was focused on her studies and she graduated from university. Sarah subsequently moved back to Arizona, where she married her high school sweetheart. Sarah had hoped that the letters would finally cease now that she was married and away from the family home. But her stalker somehow learned of her new address, and their obsession took an even more sinister turn. Within time, Sarah and her husband noticed that personal items were frequently going missing from inside their home, the most ominous of which was Sarah's underwear and her personal diary. A disturbing realization dawned over Sarah. The stalker was somehow gaining access to her home. Then in 2005, another package arrived at Sarah's front door. She anxiously opened it, not quite sure what to expect. It was a sex toy. An intense emotion of horror and fear flooded over Sarah. The next person that Sarah called was her stepfather, who rushed over to her house from his place of employment. Then one afternoon, Sarah received an unexpected phone call from the police. They had been well aware of the incidents plaguing Sarah, but they never seemed to have enough evidence to identify the stalker. Well, that was until 2005. When Sarah picked up the phone, the police officer asked her whether she knew a man named Gary Hardy. Sarah was absolutely stunned. She certainly did know a man named Gary Hardy. He was her stepfather. Police identified Hardy as a suspect in the stalking incidents after Sarah received the package in 2005. When Hardy left work to be by Sarah's side and play the dutiful role of caring stepfather, he informed his secretary of what the package had contained. The secretary immediately contacted police because not too long before this incident, Hardy had received that same package at work. The secretary had opened up the package to find the very same sex toy. She was super embarrassed, so she just closed the package and said nothing of it. Sarah was absolutely stunned. Her mother and Hardy had been married for 13 years. Gary Hardy was arrested in connection with the disturbing case, but while he was out on bail, Sarah awoke to find him pounding at her front door at around 3 a.m. He was sobbing, and he had the audacity to blame Sarah for what he had put her through. Ultimately, Gary Hardy pleaded guilty to burglary and aggravated harassment. He further pleaded guilty to child pornography and theft, but this was an unrelated case. He was ordered to serve 20 years in prison. But still, the four walls of his prison cell did very little to deter Hardy from his obsession. He continued to attempt contact with Sarah. For a while, Sarah said that he even made phone calls. Hardy is scheduled for a parole hearing in 2024, and it's a scenario that absolutely petrifies Sarah. While Hardy was arrested back in 2005, Sarah only came forward with her terrifying story in 2019. That year was a momentous one in today's culture, wherein women bravely came forward to expose stalkers and sexual predators, especially in the wake of the Me Too movement. Sarah's openness gave way to an era of healing, and in an interview with the Today Show, Sarah was asked what she wanted people to take away from her story. She stated, "The one thing that I think I have learned in retrospect is I wish I would have paid more attention to that gut feeling. When you have a feeling that something's off or strange, it's worth following that a little bit and getting to the bottom of it." Well, that is all for today's episode of Unwanted Attention. Thank you so much for watching, and please do share your thoughts on this case in the comment section below.